All right, today we're jumping into something really complex, something often hidden away, the world of adolescent shame. We're going to be looking at the work of psychotherapist Jocelyn Catty to really unpack how this powerful emotion works inside a school, its connection to self-harm, and this really unique role the school counselor has, making the unseen seen.
Let's just start with this. A 14-year-old student, Peter, asks his counselor, "Maybe you don't actually exist. That's why you're so mysterious. What do you do when there's nobody here to see you?" Wow. I mean, right there, in just a couple of sentences, he nails the entire theme for us today. This anxiety of just existing, the fear of not being seen, and yeah, the mystery of the one person whose job it is to see you.
And that mystery Peter mentions, it's absolutely key. The way Jocelyn Catty puts it, the school counselor is in this liminal position. They're on the boundary. Think about it. Their office is this private, safe space, right? But they're also a very public part of the school staff. So they're kind of invisible and visible at the same time, secret and public. And this strange in-between space, it perfectly mirrors the emotion we're about to get into. Okay, so if we're going to understand what's going on with kids like Peter, we've got to get a handle on this really powerful and kind of paradoxical emotion, shame. And it gets mixed up with guilt all the time, but they are worlds apart.
And the difference is just huge. Guilt, that's when you feel like you've failed someone else. You break a promise, you feel bad, and you want to fix it, right? To repair that connection. But shame? Oh, shame is totally different. Shame is the feeling that you have failed yourself. It's this deep sense that you, at your core, are flawed. And it doesn't make you want to fix things. It makes you want to run. It creates this escapist response, this overwhelming urge to just hide, disappear, become totally invisible.
So where does a feeling this powerful even come from? Well, psychoanalytic theory traces what's called core shame way, way back, to our very first experiences. You might have heard of the famous still face experiment. You have a mother playing with her baby. Everything's great, and then suddenly she just goes blank, a completely still, unresponsive face. The baby's reaction is immediate and intense. They get so distressed. This is what's called a containment failure. When a caregiver doesn't respond to a baby's distress, the baby doesn't just feel ignored. It's so much deeper. They can feel annihilated, like they've literally stopped existing.
And because that feeling of annihilation is just so painful, so unbearable, we build up these massive defenses against it. Sometimes we project it. We basically throw that shame onto someone else, making them feel what we can't stand to feel. Or it can fester and turn into this narcissistic rage, a really intense anger that can explode outwards at other people, or, as we're about to see, get turned inward against the self.
Now, what's really important to get here is that shame doesn't just stay with one person. Nope, it's dynamic, it moves between people. And we can see exactly how this plays out in a school through what Catty calls the shaming triangle. It's this constant, messy interplay between 3 points: the child, their home, and the school.
And this case study of an 11-year-old boy, Ahmed, just shows it perfectly. So at home, his mom is dealing with her own shame about a failed marriage, and she projects it onto Ahmed's behavior. Then at school, the staff are feeling totally helpless about his angry outbursts. So what do? They project their feeling of failure onto him and onto the counselor by labeling him a problem they can't solve. So poor Ahmed is now carrying all of this shame from everyone else, and he gets rid of it the only way he can, through rage. He basically becomes a dumping ground, a container for everyone else's awful feelings.
And here's the really tragic part for Ahmed. The very thing that's supposed to be help, getting sent to counseling, doesn't feel like support at all. For him, it's just another public humiliation. The school's public eye is now on him, officially stamping him as a failure. It just makes the shame he's already drowning in even worse.
So you can see how the counselor gets trapped right in the middle of this triangle. They're feeling the pressure from the school to fix this kid, which is really just the school's own feeling of failure being passed on. They're also feeling the parents' shame, their feeling of being blamed. The counselor ends up soaking it all up from every direction, becoming the final container in this whole messy system.
So you have this overwhelming, invisible, just unbearable feeling of shame. And it has to go somewhere. It can't stay bottled up forever. And for a lot of teenagers, it finds a way out in a very direct and very painful way. Let's talk about the connection between shame and self-harm. Catty has this incredibly powerful way of describing it. She calls it a mapping on the body. So self-harm isn't just a symptom of something being wrong. It's a form of communication. It is the act of taking this internal, invisible, emotional pain and literally writing it on the surface of your skin, where finally someone might see it.
And what's so wild is how self-harm is a perfect mirror of shame itself. I mean, think about the paradoxes. It's this intensely private thing, right? Done in secret. But it makes that private pain public with physical marks. It's a bridge from the secret world into the public one. And it even holds both of those defenses we talked about before. There's the rage turned inward as an act of violence against the self. And then there's the hiding of the marks, which is that classic shame response, that deep urge to conceal.
And to make this idea even clearer, listen to this. One student, Edward, he didn't even call it cutting. He called it tracing. Just let that word sink in for a second. Tracing. It so perfectly captures that idea of mapping, doesn't it? It's like he was carefully outlining his internal pain onto his own body, turning an invisible feeling into a visible line.
Okay, let's go back to Peter. Remember him from the very beginning? His story is the perfect example of how all this stuff, the private world of the counseling room and the very public world of the schoolyard, can just smash into each other in one single moment. So picture this. They're just outside the back door of the school. So his counselor is walking by, and Peter, who's standing there with all his friends, calls out to her. He locks eyes with her, and right there in front of everybody, he asks this super loaded question. "You wanted me to come and see you?" Whoa. I mean, the subtext there is just massive. He's taking their totally private, confidential relationship and dragging it right out into the open, in front of his friends. In that one single moment, Peter's basically acting out his entire internal struggle. He's pushing the boundaries, he's grabbing some power back, and he's blowing the cover on their private connection. It's this really jarring moment where the unseen, private world of counseling is suddenly, boom, visible to everybody. And all of this really brings us to the core of it all. All these complex, painful, and often destructive behaviors, they're all being driven by one single, fundamental human need. A researcher named Fiona Gardner calls it the incaptive conflict. And it's basically this deep, deep ambivalence about being close to people. For these kids, there's this desperate longing to be close, to be known, to really be seen. But it's all mixed up with this terrifying fear. A fear that if anyone gets too close, they'll just be rejected or shamed or worse, completely annihilated. And this whole conflict comes directly from their life experience. You see, both Peter and Edward felt fundamentally invisible. They were absolutely convinced that their parents, their teachers, none of them could see the real pain going on inside. So all their actions, the mysteries, the pushing back, the provocations, it's all coming from this one desperate place of feeling totally and completely unseen by the very people who are supposed to see them the most. Which really makes you stop and ask a pretty big question, right? What does it truly mean to feel seen? Because it's not just about someone looking in your direction. It's about having your inner world, all your pain, your shame, your very existence, actually be recognized and validated by another human being. And I think that's the main thing to take away from all this. These paradoxical gestures, right? The urge to hide that comes from shame, and the act of self-harm that writes pain onto the body, they aren't just symptoms. They are a profound form of communication. It's all a desperate, powerful attempt to take an unbearable, invisible inner world and make it, finally, undeniably visible. It's a painful cry just to prove that you are real, that you exist.